Hello, my fellow comic collectors. This video is going to be hopefully very interesting. There's a lot of information that I'm going to try to kind of provide for anyone that's watching this video. This video, I'm going to show something that I just got recently. Actually, I got it about a month ago and just recently got it back, I should say. It is a huge grail, the biggest comic in my collection, actually. And here it is right here. I just got it back from PGX. And I'm going to reveal this during the video. And I'm going to explain this comic and what it meant for me as a collector. And really show you, through my experience, how basically I learned so much just buying this one comic. So I'm a big Bad Girl fan. When I collected comics in the 90s, it was during the Bad Girl era. And, it was like Lady Death, Vampirella, there was a whole bunch. Lady Rawhide. There's like a whole bunch of these bad girls. But the ultimate bad girl, and the very first really major bad girl of comics is Wonder Woman. And that's what this comic is. I'm not going to show, I'm going to hide the grade. And this is All-Star Comics number 8. And it is the very first appearance of Wonder Woman. Hopefully a little bit of glare on it. But it is the very first appearance of Wonder Woman. And it's a Golden Age book. What makes something Golden Age is it's before the comic book authority. So what happened was during the 1930s and 40s and early in the 50s, they were producing pretty much comics, whatever they wanted to produce. Especially the EC comics, they're the kind of more famous ones in this whole, that created a lot of the problems. They were producing stuff like where they were like showing decapitation or women in bondage, a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and it was sold to kids. So there was like a movement to get rid of these comics, that they were, making kids corrupt. So they basically came up with this concept of the comic book authority, and it basically made sure that there were certain rules that had to be followed before a comic could be, released. And so basically, any comics before that authority came into play were considered Golden Age because they were basically free reign. And they are very cool comics at that time. So this comic that I bought, this Wonder Woman one, for me, it was like it's the biggest grail that I could ever have, because it's to me the first major bad girl. It's Wonder Woman, and for me, I never thought I could find this book. Find it is really hard in its own. I think there's only like 70 or 100 on the census. There's that. It's just that rare of a comic, and it's from the early 40s. It's like a really old comic, and it's rated right now number 4 in terms of the most expensive comic books ever sold. So it had a record sale of 900,000. So it's very, very pricey book. I didn't pay that much for it. And this is one of the first lessons that I learned is grade matters. Obviously, I knew this before, obviously, and because I've been collecting comics for 30 years. But or 40 years. Geez, I've been doing this a long time. So grade matters. If you get it in the highest grade, yeah, it's worth like $1 million. But if you buy it in the lowest grade, you can get low grade All-Star Comic number 8 for about 10,000. A low grade. I mean, it's a comic, but it's complete. But it's pretty rough looking. So yeah, you can get it for about 10,000 US. But when I bought this comic, he's like, oh, it's a 2 or a 3, and and he wanted 40,000 Canadian for it, and I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. Um, so I sort of talked to him for about a year about the comic, and I kept on nudge him to reduce the price. So I said, I'm really serious about buying this comic, and I talked him down to 30,000. So it went from 40 to 30. He was like, and then I said, hey, bring the comic in. We'll kind of look at it together. And then I said, well, when you see the comic, and with, as I said, grade really matters, especially like one grade point can drop the value by a few $1,000s. Um, so if you can complain about the grade, you can really chop some big money off the price. So he thought it was graded. He should be graded around a 2. I convinced him to sort of price it at a 1.5. So that's 2 grades below. And I said, the centerfold is detached. The thing that you have to know about Golden Age comics is when they stapled in the book, when the staples, a lot of the time the staples they used were not big enough. It's a dumb thing that they did, but the staples weren't big enough. And what would happen is the centerfolds had a tendency of being detached. And that was the case with this comic. The centerfold had come out. And I said, hey, it's detached. That kind of reduces the grade. There was a cut on it. So I was saying, oh, these are all things that kind of reduce the grade. Other than that, it was actually very nice. The pages are very, very clean considering it's 80-year-old comic. And the cover is actually very sharp. So yeah, I don't want to say that too much because if I say that, he's probably right when he was thinking around 2 to 3 range. So I didn't want to say too much about the goodness of the comic, but there was things that I could say, hey, look, this kind of reduces the grade, and I was trying to get him to grade it as a 1.5. So eventually we agreed on that 1.5 grade, and he wanted 26,000 Canadian. That's still a lot of money. Now, one of the things that I learned is with Golden Age comics, there's not many of them. They're just really rare. So what you can do is you can look up auction histories of comics. And you can even almost find your comic because there's just so few of them that generally it's probably been auctioned in the past. And you can actually find a little bit of history about your own comic that you buy. So I actually was able to find, because the comic has, if you look at it, I want to hide the grade. If you look at it, it has like right here, a little piece that's been taken out. And that was very distinctive, the way that that's been taken out. So I was looking through auction records and I found that comic. I found my comic. And it was graded as a 1.5 and it was a green label. Now, if you know anything about green labels and blue labels, well, it makes a huge difference. A green label is what's considered not a restored, but a incomplete comic, that there's something majorly wrong with it. For example, a very famous one would be like Hulk 181. Sometimes they cut out the Marvel stamp, that coupon, and if that's been removed, well, then it gets a green label because it's considered not complete. So this book was considered not complete, and it also had something in the notes. It said married copy. So what they thought, whoever graded at not EC, CGC, what they thought was that centerfold, which gets detached a lot in Golden Age comics, what happened was they thought that somebody had taken another comic, another All-Stars #8, and taken the centerfold and added it in. They thought it was a married copy, so the 2 comics put together. And if you look, though, at the comic, you can actually see whether or not it's married, right? You can take a look. The way I went through the pages. I could see that it was not a married copy, that the centerfold, all that happened was that it became detached. And the way you can see that is there's different tanning that happens on the page, especially with older comics. They kind of go yellow, the pages over time, and that's called tanning. And what you can do is say, hey, does the tanning kind of match to the pages that are underneath it? And if it matches, well, that's hard to fake. So generally what will happen is you can sort of say, hey, this page is original to this comic. It's not tanned in a different way. Also, the way the page was sort of teared around where the staples would have been kind of matched the 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 comic, the main comic. So I could tell that this page was not married. It was actually from the comic. So I saw that there was potential here to get out of that green label. Now, when I bought it, it was not in a case. So probably the person that bought it knew that it was poorly graded. And that happens sometimes. Like even with Golden Age comics, they can make mistakes when they grade them. And, this was a big mistake. Having a green label cuts the value in half. It just kills the value. Um, and when we're talking thousands of dollars, that can make a huge difference in terms of how much you pay for something. Uh, and I could see that the auction records showed that it sold for about 13,000 US in the past. So that's about it's about 18,000 Canadian. So that was 2 years ago. So not only did I know how much it sold for, what the grade was considered, I knew all this kind of history. And what I did was I used the site Heritage Auctions to look at their auction history to find the comic. So this is a very important step that you have to do. You do a lot of research before buying a Golden Age comic. And so what happened was originally we agreed on 26,000. But when I went back to him and said, hey, look, I did some investigation and this book had sold for about 18,000 in the past, and it was labeled with a green label. So I went back to him with that information. I could prove, that this was the right comic because it had that very distinctive cut. And he agreed that, obviously it's a green label. He did some calling to find out the guy that he bought it from, and he agreed to lower the price even further. So I got it for 24,000 Canadian. Now, I knew that it was graded incorrectly because it actually showed very, very sharply. It's a very nice book. Pages inside are very, very, like not white, but off-white. It just looks like a much higher grade than a 1.5, which is a pretty beaten up copy. If you ever see a 1.5, you can tell it's a pretty beaten up copy. So I decided, hey, I can't send it back to CGC because they'll probably make the same mistake. And I think CGC has really gone downhill in terms of their grading ability. So I kind of wanted to send it to PGX. So I sent it to PGX. And, the whole time I was so paranoid sending a book. I couldn't get it. Like when you mail these books off to PGX from Canada, they won't insure it. The most they'll insure it for is $2,000. $20,000 book, that doesn't really help much. So I was so paranoid sending this book off to PGX. So I had it tracked. I was like calling every day, like just to make sure that they got the book. I was very, very paranoid sending it off. And so it arrived at PGX. They when it's a Golden Age book, they have what's called a 3-day turnaround, where they're very quick about reviewing it and grading it. So PGX is a really good company to work with. I just have to give them kudos. They are very, very professional. They answer the phone whenever you call. Very good company. Just very impressed with them overall. So what happened was I sent it off to them. They look at it, and they said that they're going to send it back. Now, what I did was one of the things, this is a really important trick, and especially on the Golden Age comics, you want to do this trick. If you want to get like a big boost, you should get it cleaned and pressed. PGX offers that service in-house. So you can basically get the comic look a little bit sharper. They can get rid of some of the creasing that might happen on the cover. They can really make the comic shine. And especially with the Golden Age comic, you want to get that extra little bit of shine because it can boost the comic by one like half grade or maybe a full grade if you're really, really lucky. So generally, they're going to give you a bit of boost in terms of the grading too, because they're the ones doing the cleaning and pressing. So you're going to get that bit of a boost. So I did that. I paid for that extra service. Now, when you're grading an older comic that's over $1,000, you're going to pay for that. There's a percentage that you pay, and it's about $700 to ship and receive and press and clean and grade this comic. So $700, it's quite substantial just for the grading. However, when I got it back, I was very happy because I got a 2.5. So if you know anything about grading, that's a huge difference. Now 2.5 so it was originally graded as a 1.5. 2.5 is 3 grades higher. So it goes 1.5, 1.8, a 2, and then a 2.5. So this is 3 grades higher. Now in terms of price, that's huge in terms of like a Golden Age comic. Now 1.5 last year sold for about $17,000 in a 1.5 of this comic. And this comic is one of the fastest rising comics of the top. It's number 4 on the top 10 list of most valuable comics of all time. And it is one of the fastest going. It goes up about 15% per year. So if it was sold for roughly 17,000 last year, well, you probably expect it to go for 18,000 this year. It's going up pretty quick. And that's a 1.5. Now a 2.5, 2 years ago, because there's not many, there's as I said, there's only like 100 and something on the census. A 2.5 was sold for 26,000 3 years ago. Okay, so 26,000 3 years ago. Now, if you think about that, it probably at 2.5 would sell for around 30,000. So this comic almost double in price just by getting it regraded. So that's a huge, huge benefit. And remember, not only did it get a boost in terms of the grade, but it went from being a green label to being a blue label. Now, blue label means that it's not, it is a complete comic. It doesn't have that issue that they talked about. It does mention that the centerfold is detached, but PGX was smart. They recognized that this page is from this original comic. So they understood that it was not, 2 comics merged into one. So they gave it the complete label, and they mentioned that it was detached. So that green label makes a huge difference. The change from being a green label to being a blue label, huge, huge boost in the value of the comic. So these are all things that I learned, like that you really have to understand your comic and know the potential behind it. And you have to make that informed decision, because if you don't make that informed decision, you could lose out big time. Especially on these older comics where you're spending a lot of money, you are taking a big risk in terms of whether or not it's going to be a good return on investment. And this one is kind of a great return on investment because I was able to get it graded higher and also get that blue label, which is huge. The other thing that made like this to me is like, this is going to be my personal collection. I'm not selling this comic, so it doesn't really matter. But it was one that I saw as potentially becoming something I could never afford. There's going to be the new Wonder Woman movie coming out, and I just saw that if I didn't get it now, and I would probably never be able to afford it because it just would keep on climbing. It's already $1 million book in high grade, so it's like one of those things where you gotta you gotta put out a bit of money. I mean, I spent 24,000 on it. That's a lot of money, and uh, you know, it was something that I really had to consider before buying. Uh, it's not something you buy every day. So yeah, it was a big purchase. I was very happy with the purchase. My local comic book guy was very good dealer. Um, it's just you know pretty exciting altogether. And there's a fly. So yeah, so All Star Comics number 8. my my first major Grail. Um, I have other Grails, I guess, but this one a little bit special, a little bit sentimental to me because of how long I've been searching for this comic, and to finally get it at my local comic book shop. The fact that he even had it was pretty amazing. Um, and yeah, just a little bit of a story behind it, but I hope that this story kind of teaches some lessons for anyone that's collecting comics. Even it applies to even modern comics, that you really need to know what you're buying and really understand grade. Uh, I spent a lot of time just learning how to grade comics before I bought this one because I wanted to be really careful about getting the right grade. Um, so yeah, if you kind of do the right research, you can save thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars if you're buying a cheaper comic. And Yeah, I hope this video was useful. Thanks for watching. And I'm actually going to reveal another Grail in a few months that I have coming in the market. There's another one in the back that you can see. That's First Mr. Freeze. I just got that recently too from Heritage Auctions. So yeah, there's some pretty big comics that I'm coming up with that I've been sort of hunting for. So hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.